Hi, I'm Sarah, and I was going to just have a quick chat about something that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately, and that is food waste. I did a recipe on bread pudding last week, which of course I used a decent chunk of bread that otherwise would have been thrown out. Over 157 tonnes of food in New Zealand alone every year ends up in landfill. In some cases, it's about a third of the food that people buy ends up in landfill. I thought, wow. Now, I'm a huge fan of the saying, waste not, want not. Of course, that's not a saying that's strictly true. You're always going to want for stuff, but if you don't waste things, you're going to want for a lot less. Now, of course, any food that you throw out, stuff that you could potentially have eaten, you're going to eat something else instead of that, and it's going to be stuff you spent money on. So it is absolutely directly affecting your food bill every time you throw something out that could have potentially been used. And sometimes it's things that you don't even think about using. But I thought, well, I'll just go through a few ideas and absolutely drop some comments below and give me ideas, because I am constantly getting ideas from other people. One big thing to start doing is, and I've done a couple of videos just on this topic alone, and that's when you plan your weekly shop, actually plan out your weekly shop, decide what meals you're going to make, and look in your fridge, look in your freezer, look in your pantry, make notes. Have a look at what meals you've already got. Have a look at what fruit is about to start turning or going past its best. If you're like me and you buy fresh fruit every week, the fruit that is left there at the end of the week, I do a bit of a squeeze test, an assessment. You know, does it need using? If it needs using quickly, what can I do for baking this week? What will I need to buy to do the baking? So I never throw it out. I always plan for how I can use it. And if I don't plan on doing any baking or anything, is it something that can be frozen? Usually it is when it comes to fruit. Just about anything can be frozen. I've even frozen whole lemons, and then as I've needed them for baking or whatever, you just grate them, skin and all. Things like veggies. If you've got veggies that are starting to turn, have a look and think, right, what's a dinner I can make? Incorporating all of them. Can I make a casserole and just chuck them all in? Can I make a soup? Even if you make a big pot of soup and just freeze it in batches, you're constantly using up the veggies. After I've done a shop, my kids often come home from school. Oh yay, mum's done a shop, what's for afternoon tea? And I'll directly point them to the fruit that is already in the fridge from last week. So we've always got a first in, first out system, especially if the kids decide, at the moment they're very big on their apples. So I buy plenty of apples, but they're always the very first thing to vanish. And so, you know, at the end of the week, I'm often left with a whole heap of kiwi fruits or oranges or something. But that's fine. I can do baking with it. Bananas, of course, you can freeze them and use them later on for baking. With the veggies, even if you make something like, just make a batch of savoury mince and just chop up any vegetables you've got that need using up, chuck it all in that mince mixture, put that mince mixture in the freezer in portions, and you've got something there as a base for a dinner one night. Add some pasta to it, turn it into a spaghetti bolognese, you know, that sort of thing. A pie, a pasty. If you've got potatoes that are starting to, a little bit on the sort of wrinkly side and they're starting to sprout, plant them. Seriously, put them in the ground. I actually found a box of potatoes that still had some potatoes in the bottom of the box that I'd completely forgotten about, that were in our shed, and they were sprouting up really good. Now this was at the start of winter, not the right time for planting potatoes, but I've planted them anyway. Now the frost has pretty much killed them off, but I've been told to rest assured they will probably still spring up, and I'll have some nice early potatoes for next season, so fingers crossed that works. Just so you know, I am planning on doing a bit of a gardening vlog. I'm no expert when it comes to gardening, but that is on my to-do list. Carrots, I'm pretty big on growing carrots. Now, of course, if you grow your own carrots, you've got all the tops on them. Those tops, chop them up, You can freeze them, or you can use them fresh or whatever. Chop them up and use them as a herb in the place of parsley. Now speaking of herbs, you can prolong the life of them. If you've got fresh herbs, like with a stalk, put them in some water and it will prolong the life of them. It will kind of bring them back to life if they're starting to wilt. Same with celery. If you've got celery, that tends to wilt in the fridge quite quickly. Chop off the end, pop the celery sticks in a little tub of water, and in less than a day they will have sprung back to life and be lovely and crisp again, as opposed to all wilty. So I do that quite often. Now the very end bit of the celery, the bit that you probably chop off and throw away, don't throw that away. Put it on your windowsill in a little tub of water, and it will start growing little roots out of it, and when it does that, you can plant it in the garden. So that's another thing that I've been experimenting with. I've got some in the garden now. It might be the wrong time of year, but I'm trying it because I don't want to throw stuff out, as I say. You can also freeze herbs. That's something else worth mentioning. Freeze them in ice cube trays, little bit of water, freeze your herbs, and then you can just like pop them in a casserole or whatever. So that's another good way to prolong the life of your fresh herbs. So if you peel your potatoes, carrot, beetroot, parsnip, even pumpkin, if you're not using the peel in your recipe, I always try and use the peel if I can, because it's got a lot of, often the best nutrients are actually in the peels. But if you are peeling them, put the peels to one side, cover them with a bit of oil and a bit of salt, and put them under the grill. Toast them up. Make some veggie chips. Seriously, so good. Now your veggie scraps, I will come clean and say this is something that I've tried a couple of times and I failed for a couple of different reasons. The first time I put too much celery in and it was The second time I actually just tried it today. I kind of forgot about it and burnt it. But start collecting scraps that you would not normally eat, like the tops of carrots that you chop off, your onion skins, the leaves and stuff off your broccoli or your cauliflower, the inside part of the capsicum, things like that. Collect them, put them in a container in the freezer. When you've got enough, put them in a pot. If you've got a fireplace to cook on, perfect. If not, boil them up with some water. Veggie stock, instant veggie stock. So as I say, I'm not perfect. This is still trial and error with me, but I'm going to give it another go. I'm not going to give up on veggie stock. Yogurt, if you've got a bit of Greek yogurt that's about to turn, I mean, of course, the first thing you can do is make your own yogurt naturally. I've got a video on that, I'll put a link down below, but if you've got a bit and it's starting to smell a bit ick, mix it up with some self-raising flour, make a dough and freeze it. You could even roll it out as a pizza base, put it in the freezer so you've got a ready-made pizza base for when you need it. Yeah, you can do all sorts of baking with 2-ingredient dough like that. So, and if yogurt is just on the verge of going off, it's not a problem. You can still use it for baking. And there's a lot of things like that. Of course, there's a difference between a best before date and a use by date on packaging. Use by date is generally don't use it beyond that date because it will go off. It could make you ill. A best before date literally just means it is best before that date. After that date, the quality of the product may not be as good, but it will still be fine. Leftovers, dinner leftovers, needless to say, don't just bin them. Think about if you could make a secondary meal out of it. If it's something like a casserole, can you stretch it out with a can of beans and put it on toast the next day for dinner? Could you make a pie out of it? Could you make a single pasty out of it for lunch tomorrow? Could you even just put it in a container in the freezer and mix it up with something else another night to stretch it out? Quite often if we've got just a little bit of dinner left over, not really enough to warrant doing a lot with, I'll actually put it in a container in the freezer. I might just heat it up on another day when Clint's at work and the kids are at school, instant little lunch for me. Now if there's something on special at the supermarket and you want to stock up, that's all well and good, but make sure it's something that can go in the freezer. You know, if some kind of fruit or veggie, fresh produce is on special, really think about whether you are actually going to use it. Are you going to do some baking with it? Are you going to eat it? Are you going to freeze it? Yeah, just don't overbuy for the sake of overbuying, even though it may be tempting if something is cheap. If you get something, say if mince is on special, then yeah, you can buy it because you can freeze it. If you're going to buy a big 1 kg pack of it and you're only going to use for single portions 500 grams at a time, make sure you separate it before you freeze it. Otherwise, you're going to have to defrost the whole 1 kg of mince in one go, and then you have to use it all up, or use it all within a couple of nights. So by freezing things in individual portions, you're just taking that pressure off to use it immediately and potentially not use it. Think about the self-service bins. If you're getting something for baking, like nuts or dried fruit or seeds, that sort of thing, it's quite often cheaper to buy it in the bulk bins, or even places like Bin In and that sort of thing. And they will often, if you are one of these people who's trying to reduce your plastic consumption, often these places will actually let you bring your own containers to fill up yourself. And that way you're only buying the quantity that you need. You're not buying a big bag where you may not be using the whole bag. If you're at a restaurant, you're going out for dinner somewhere, don't be afraid to ask for a doggy bag if there are leftovers. I absolutely did that the last time we went out somewhere, and yeah, it wasn't a lot, but it was, don't be ashamed of that. You know, you paid for that food and you want it, and all they're going to do is throw it in the bin. Anything that you really can't use or you're not going to use, one thing is compost. Absolutely, that's something that I should have started last year, and I intended on it and I never did, but we are going to do it this year. We're starting a compost heap, and you know, just put it on the compost heap, let it do its thing, and in a few months time you're going to have some lovely soil. Put it in your veggie patch. Needless to say, grow your own veggies. A lot less will go to waste if you grow your own, because you put in the effort, you want to use them. If you've got excess produce that you're not going to use, ask around, see if anybody wants to do swapsies. Locally to us, we've actually got a free food stall that people who grow their own produce and they've got excess, they can put it on the food stall. It's sharing it, it's not throwing it out, and people might be wanting to do swapsies and that sort of thing. Also asking around if people have animals, if people have got chickens or pigs, they're always after scraps. Trust me, I know. No, my chickens love it when I give them some table scraps. As long as it's the right thing, as long as you know what you're giving them is safe to eat. Even if you're just feeding it to animals, it's still not going into landfill. It's going to actually feed creatures, if not humans. When I was working at preschool and we had a couple of piggies, I'd bring a bucket in with me, and the kids all knew that I had a bucket and I'd drawn a picture of a piggy on it, and they knew that any food scraps they put in there would go to feed my piggies. So that was really good. And I mean, preschoolers, there was a lot of food that went in there. As I say, leave me comments down below, because I love getting inspiration myself. What do you do to reduce your food wastage? What steps do you intend on doing that you might not have done yet? Hit that like button and an angel will get its wings. I don't know where that came from. Hit subscribe and we'll catch you next time. Bye.